1947, we have received and analyzed between 1 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources.
Fleet of them. What's on the ASA? My gosh. That's not LNS stuff, is it? It's not. I don't understand. Well, if there's no thing.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
Unidentified Anomalous Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome. I'm Tom Thompson, and you are watching the Unidentified Anomalous Podcast. I'm flying solo again, unfortunately, for those of you that are huge fans of Digby, which I think we all are, but there's a good reason for that. Happy birthday, Mr. Digby. He's out with his family today, celebrating his birthday, and today was pretty wacky. It threw a wrench in how this entire show was planned out for like the last week. We were supposed to go live at 1. My internet went out because we were having ridiculously windy, rainy, thundering. You know, the storm that was over my house was just perfect to cause an internet outage, which it did. It lasted for a few hours. We were supposed to have Paige Fox on with us. We're rescheduling her hopefully for next week. And funny enough, her internet was going in and out too. She wouldn't have even been able to make it at that point. So that's the situation I had to deal with today. But I was like, you know what? I still want to do the show because we're going to be doing an interview. We didn't necessarily grab, UFO footage clips and the things that we normally do. So today's going to be kind of a change of pace. So like it's usually segmented, but I have enough in my own head from the last week, and I have enough notes that I think I could at least carry this show for an hour and make it enjoyable for all of you out there listening. So before we move on, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Please share it with your friends and family and other people that you know online in the UFO community. It really helps us out tremendously. And thank you very, very much for spending your day or evening with me. It means a lot. So we're going to just definitely jump right into, the most dominating piece of news that has permeated the airwaves for the last few weeks now. But obviously there's been some developments. And that has to do with the UAPDA, which, as you know, is the amendment to the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act that notably was influenced by the likes of Lou Elizondo and Danny Sheehan. And if you don't know who Sheehan is, I'll just quickly say he's a constitutional lawyer who has a history of working on significant cases, for example, the Pentagon Papers and Watergate. So his resume is tremendous, to say the least. The UAPDA was presented to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to gain legitimacy. Schumer, after reviewing and refining the amendment, he introduced it to the 2024 NDAA with the support of co-sponsor Senator Mike Rounds. Now, Schumer emphasized the public's right to know about unexplained phenomena, unknown technologies, and especially non-human intelligence interacting with this planet. He also believed Senator Harry Reid, the late Senator Harry Reid, who had long advocated for UAP disclosure, would have been pleased with this particular development, and I'd imagine that's probably the case. The amendment was structured similarly to the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992. which aimed for a gradual release of information over the course of 25 years. However, its focus was on UAP transparency and the acknowledgement of non-human intelligence. The amendment mentioning NHI 22 times defines it as any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of origin. It highlights the potential national security risks posed by UAPs, a concern brought to the forefront by Navy pilots Ryan Graves and Commander David Fravor, who recorded the initial videos that were released by the New York Times. The amendment's necessity is underlined in Section 2A, subsection 4, citing credible evidence and testimony that suggests the existence of undisclosed government records on unidentified anomalous phenomena. This section references whistleblowers like David Grush and Lou Elizondo, along with journalists Leslie Keane and Ralph Blumenthal. The amendment arose from a desire for justice and transparency, addressing concerns like the Pentagon's repeated, 6 in a row, by the way, audit failures and the treatment of whistleblowers. It delves into the complex relationship between the bureaucracy and the public, questioning the authority of unelected officials like the DoD and defense contractors in deciding public knowledge about potential non-human visitations and the use of taxpayer money for reverse engineering non-human technology. Despite the NDAA's significance in military budgeting and its consistent passage since 1961, Schumer's amendment faced challenges in the conference stage where House and Senate members reconcile their bills. According to Chris Sharp of Liberation Times, who will be making an appearance on our show hopefully sometime in January, key UAP language in the NDAA was significantly weakened due to the influence of congressmen like Mike Turner, Mike Rogers, Mitch McConnell, Roger Wicker, and Mike Johnson. Sharp suggests that the CIA and Lockheed Martin played roles in targeting these congressmen, a claim supported by their campaign donation records. The amendment's dilution, particularly in the removal of its powers like subpoena and eminent domain over NHI technology, reflects broader issues of transparency and government accountability. This ongoing struggle for openness is not just about the existence of aliens or NHI, whichever one you'd like to call it, but about addressing the injustices in government operations. This reaches all across the board, in all directions, essentially. UAP topic sheds light on the intricate and sometimes corrupt nature of bureaucracy and the importance of political efficacy and participatory government in our democracy. If this has been going on like we think it has, we do not truly have a democracy in the United States of America at this current time. It's not unexpected. It was clear that there would be significant efforts to render this act ineffective. Nevertheless, the Senate Intelligence Committee is now in possession of a vast trove of classified information regarding these phenomena, courtesy of Grush and other still unnamed whistleblowers. They remain determined and are not backing down, collaborating closely with Danny Sheehan, who has maintained close ties with numerous whistleblowers who are extremely frustrated by this outcome. They are now exploring different avenues, we'll say, for disclosure. Ross Coulthard had mentioned that things are going to start to get very interesting and stated that, quote, if I were the gatekeepers, the people who are trying to put a muzzle on this issue, I would be very, very nervous. The period of questioning whether we are being visited by a non-human intelligence is now behind us. We have moved beyond that initial phase of debate, in my opinion. Individuals have shared with me personally their encounters that couldn't be captured on camera or independently verified. However, for them, these experiences were as tangible as my physical presence. I deem them to be credible witnesses. I find them to be honest and very believable. Each person I've conversed with recounted remarkably similar events despite not having communicated with each other, and with no intention of gaining any sort of recognition or wealth for these events being retold. Now, experts in folklore, some of them at least, would suggest that the idea of small beings visiting us in our sleep or turning up from unknown lands and unforeseen constructs of reality. This has been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Up to this point, there are millions of documented instances that, strangely enough, all exhibit some common patterns. Abduction experiences are not indicative of psychosis, any unusual dissociative disorder, neurosis. They don't bear a concrete similarity to any known psychiatric conditions and are not a form of repressed abuse, as far as I can tell. And that's also based on research that has been done and the countless hours upon hours spent with experiencers, abductees, and putting those pieces together. Rational and sound individuals report these deeply traumatic, intensely vivid, and well-expressed experiences. They're rich in detail and consistency. Such accounts have been reported even by children as young as 2 years old, and oftentimes end up getting linked to some kind of UFO sighting as well, that either took place before or after, during even. So, throughout my life, I've been working to try to understand the essence of the phenomenon. And what I've discerned is akin to grappling with the concept of the divine, or the realm that encompasses both tangible and intangible intelligences. It appears we've maybe severed our connection with this other higher realm, for lack of a better term. Despite its attempts to communicate with us, we often remain unresponsive. While there are some individuals, particularly those with advanced spiritual awareness, they're reestablishing this connection, so to speak. The majority of us are deeply entrenched in the material world and its language. This is a point that really resonates with me, that I've kind of dug into, that comes from the late Dr. John Mack. The idea of the divine realm adapting to our understanding, manifesting in the material world through physical interactions and alterations, even reproductive links, marks like cuts and scars, scorched earth where these objects were said to have landed. These manifestations, consistently reported and sometimes captured in photographs, may not originate from our known physical world, but they certainly communicate with it. This crossover from the spiritual to the physical realm particularly intrigues those who are usually skeptical, prompting a demand for tangible evidence. And I understand that. It's a hallmark of empirical science. This demand arises because other ways of knowing have diminished, essentially. Yet, these physical manifestations do capture our attention, and they speak to us in the material language that we do comprehend. It's what we know. To fundamentally disrupt the Western mindset, which is deeply ingrained with materialistic and dualistic thinking, and now widespread globally, obviously, one must bring elements typically confined to the spiritual realm into the physical realm. While Western thought does not, well, I guess I could say it like this. While Western thought does accommodate the concept of a spirit world, which gets explored through mythology, religion, poetry, things of that nature. It considers the crossover of the spiritual into the physical realm as a major transgression, is probably a good way to put it. This blending of spiritual and physical realities challenges the core beliefs of the Western mind, which views such occurrences as a significant violation of sorts. Yet this powerful clash of realms is exactly what we're witnessing with the phenomenon. We see this going on. It's funny how my perception of the phenomenon has evolved over time. It started off with a very simplistic nuts and bolts approach. When I was a kid, UFOs and abduction, I chalked it up to being, uh, biological intelligence coming from uh, intergalactic space outside of our solar system, perhaps very far away, coming here and abducting humans to study us. It used to be just that simple for me. Now, now things are a lot more complicated. Now things have bled into other areas of study, like the esoteric and Enochian magic and mythology, and it went from being this black and white painting to now it's a color palette encompassing all of the colors, and Picasso and Da Vinci and Dali decided to paint on different parts of it. It's a conundrum, but it's the most interesting one. And that's why I study this. Now, I came today with the idea of telling you guys some interesting stories. And now I want to just hop into the chat real quick. Sandy, hello. What's up, Steven? What's up, Spooks? Happy to see you guys here. So, some interesting things happened this week. This is definitely going to be a listener-friendly episode. And there's going to be some stories I'm going to give you guys here that are very recent and some not so recent, but I feel like they'll definitely make for a good listen. It's a change of pace. But that's like what we want to do with this show. Sometimes we do want to do something a little different. So, when I was at work yesterday, there was a significant chunk of time where I was in the store on my own. I was running everything. My boss left early. It was everybody else's day off, so it left me to basically handle everything. I'm not complaining either, by the way. It's usually pretty slow on a Saturday. And I'm just doing office work, paperwork. Nothing crazy. Now, every now and then we'll get somebody that comes in that, either wants to look at furniture or wants to, make a payment. So this was a customer that I've dealt with a couple times. Really nice guy. I'd say if I had to guess, he's probably like in his mid-40s. And I had my cell phone out, like within his view, and I had been scrolling through a PDF file that I had. And in that PDF file, there was this artist rendition of a flying saucer schematic that I really liked. And I was actually using it to try to generate images on Midjourney. You can use the describe function. You can use the blend function if you're familiar with Midjourney and how that operates. I was doing that in Discord. And, just making some cool artwork with it, messing around, because then I'll take it and I'll go into Photoshop and tinker with it. Like, if you guys see, I have a new banner on the YouTube channel here and on X, and that's just from fiddling around in Photoshop and like the way that came out. But he saw it. He saw the UFO, saw the flying saucer, and he was like, "Hey, what are you looking at there? The flying saucer?" And I gave him just like a brief little like rundown of what this was. I was like, "Yeah, this is a PDF that I downloaded the other day. It's about the characteristics of unidentified flying objects, and this was a schematic that somebody drew that's meant to be a representation of one of these objects." And this got him really excited. And next thing you know, I'm talking for like 20 minutes about everything that's been going on in the news. And we talked about the Schumer Amendment. We talked about Grush. We talked about Colt Heart. The guy really knew his stuff. I was actually really impressed. He was keeping up with it. Now, this is where it got kind of weird. So he goes and tells me that a few months ago, he had an experience just down the road from where I work, where he was actually taking a walk one night to the store instead of driving. He just wanted to get some fresh air. And he saw like this weird green beam of light coming down from the sky, and he couldn't quite pinpoint its point of origin because of the cloud cover. But he said it was like a giant green laser light, but like wide. And I'm like, man, that sounds familiar. And then it dawned on me. I had a coworker a few months ago who described the same exact thing. But it gets better. A few months after that coworker had told me the story, there was another customer that had come into the store and told me the same thing. So that's 3 people. 3 separate people that have not had any sort of interactions with each other because that coworker actually left and is working at a different job now. These 3 people don't know each other. And all of them described the same incident. This green laser beam coming down out of the clouds, kind of scanning the ground. As they said it was in a very tight, almost computerized motion. Like they said, it looked like it was scanning, like it came down and it was doing like sweeps, like it was looking for something. And none of them could figure out where it was coming from because of the cloud cover. So I thought that was interesting. Now, get this. So I leave work yesterday and I'm driving home, and I haven't even told Digby about this. I haven't told anybody about this. I haven't made a post about it yet. But I'm pulling around the back of the building that I work in. And over there's like a fence, there's a little bit of trees, and then there's some houses. And there was this area above one of the trees that the only way I can even describe it looked like it was like blurred out, if that even makes sense. And I'm like looking at it and I thought it was my windshield, but it looked like it was moving. So I pulled my car over and I lower my window, and over the course of like 2 seconds, that blurred area became this bright, like vibrant, powerful green color. Like in a radial formation. And then it just went, and it's like before I even had the chance to reach for my phone or anything, it's like I don't know, maybe it knew I was going to try to take a video of it. But the fact that it was green like that in the same area and then it happens only a couple hours removed from me having a conversation about something similar, you know, uh, I don't know how to explain that, but I'm not the only one that's having these sorts of experiences. Matt Ford from the Good Trouble Show, who I shout out to Matt. Me and him were speaking in DMs the other day, and really, really nice guy. Very busy, but he's a gentleman. He does excellent work out here. I had told him that the fact that he, was having these experiences with like orbs and whatnot really resonated with me. He's not the only one. There are a lot of people right now that are getting into this topic, and then once they do, they start to see things that they've never seen before. They start to experience things that they've never experienced before. What that means and how that operates is anyone's guess at this point. Um, I guess you could call it the hitchhiker effect, sort of, but it's different. It's not like they went to Skinwalker Ranch and brought something home with them. This was like, it's something different than that. Person A isn't studying UFOs, and then maybe they get turned on to it by person B, or they see a documentary, then they get deeply invested in it, and all of a sudden these objects are now making appearances outside of their house at night. Why that is, I'm not sure. There's people like Jacques Vallée, who I would, if I ever get the chance to speak to him, I would like to hear his thoughts on that particular idea. There's a couple other people that we're going to have on the show that I would like to broach that with. I would also like to announce there's no definitive date on it right now, but I just emailed Stephen Bassett today. He is interested in coming on the show with Digby and I. We're just working on getting that all scheduled and getting that whole thing figured out, because as you guys probably know, Mr. Bassett's a very busy individual. But he has agreed to come on the show, so shout out to Steve. I've interviewed him before. We've exchanged comments and DMs on multiple occasions. He's a gentleman. Treats me with a lot of respect. And I don't think there's anybody in our line of work that's going to paint a better picture of what's going on in Washington, at least, than Mr. Bassett. So I figured I wanted to let you guys know about that. Hey, Lily, one of my longtime moderators is here. Good to see you, my dear, coming here from way down under. So there's a few specific stories that I wanted to tell you guys tonight. Yeah, Lily, that's been going on for a while, right? That's what happens, when you age. I'm just rocking it though. I mean, I've thought about, coloring it and seeing what happens just to see, but yeah. You'll be in my area soon. Wait, you're coming over to the United States? That's actually pretty cool, because my podcast partner is going to be doing the same thing. Probably like next year. I think Digby's coming out to the United States, and we're gonna hang out. That's really cool. I don't know if right now is like the best time in history to be coming to the United States, but I'm sure you can find something fun to do over here, right? I would love to visit Australia. There's a lot of really interesting UFO research down there, actually. A lot of good footage, a lot of amazing researchers. Going traveling for 6 months. Wow. Yeah, I wish I could do that. But I might be going to Roswell next year, but stay tuned on that one. Not sure, but good possibility. So now you guys have heard, because I've mentioned it so many times. The experience that I had when I was a child. But I wanted to treat you guys tonight. And I wanted to, I'm going to pull it up now. Not all of you know this, man. I'm sure a few of you do. If you guys are familiar with Ryan Sprague, Somewhere in the Skies, he released a couple books. He reached out to me, and asked me to be in the first book, uh, my experience. I don't actually know how he found it, but he had contacted me and he was like, "Hey, could you type up what happened to you, in your own voice?" And then he's like, "If you could for the audiobook, do a narrated recording of your experience." So I said, absolutely, absolutely. I thought that was really cool. I was really honored that anybody, would reach out to me for that reason. My experience is the single most important individual incident that's ever happened in my life. So I want to treat you guys because not all of you have Kindle or, not all of you have the book. Not all of you have read the book. You guys have heard me just basically sporadically speak about it. I was gonna do this in a YouTube video, and I may still do it, but, with like generated images to try to, paint the picture and such, and maybe some added details if I can. But I'm gonna read you guys what happened to me. And this is directly from the book. I typed this up, and here goes nothing. My name is Tom Thompson. I host, at the time, I just said I host Podcast Zero and the Cortex Zero YouTube channel. I'm a guitarist, artist, and own a small digital design company. I've been researching UFOs for over 25 years. These are two, because there's actually another story in here, of my personal stories of my experiences with the phenomenon that significantly intensified my interest throughout my life. When I was 9 years old, I was in the Boy Scouts. I was on my very first camping trip ever on this particular evening, and I was in the process of earning my fire badge. I know it's kind of corny, but I was a kid. So when everyone called it a night, two of us would tend to the campfire and make sure it was out. One of the adults would then check the fire just to be on the safe side, and we would receive our badges if it was completely out. It had been a pretty interesting night, considering we had a campground right next to us that was occupied by a group of practicing Wiccans. I am not sure what they were out there for, but at the time it felt like some kind of celebration. I remember the chanting and singing coming from their camp. It was really beautiful and carried on into the early morning hours. After tending to the fire and earning our badges, one of my friends and I decided to stay up a bit later, excited over the fact that we technically had no designated bedtime that we had to abide by. I had exited my tent, which was occupied by myself and three of my friends. We sat down on the logs around where the campfire had been, just talking. The camp was situated in this nice clearing in the woods, surrounded by a tree line that broke apart to reveal a circular section of the sky. This was in the middle of Lebanon State Forest, now known as Brendan T. Burns State Forest in southern New Jersey. It was a clear and bright spring evening into early morning, cloudless, with the stars prominently displayed above us. My friend and I were sitting there for maybe a half hour or so just talking when, out of nowhere, there was just this whoosh, a pushing of air all around us. It didn't feel like a natural breeze, though. It almost had the quality of a car driving past you at high speed. And as I took notice of this, I'll never forget this. I felt the hairs on my body stand up. It was this remarkably weird, static electrical sensation, as if I were sitting next to a giant latex rubber balloon. Just a few seconds later, I couldn't help but notice that the usual noises of the outdoors were non-existent. It didn't make any sense that all the various wildlife around us would simultaneously fall silent, but it did. That was when it happened. In my peripheral vision to my upper right above, something started protruding from that section of the sky. It slowly moved further into view until the entire object was visible. It was enormous. The moon was exceptionally bright on this night, so there was no misidentifying it. It obscured the stars behind it, and that was when I knew it was a solid craft. It was triangular with this deep, beautiful, yet featureless matte black texture. Each corner of the triangle came to a sort of rounded point. There weren't any discernible rivets or lines of any kind. It wasn't moving very fast. It was comparable to a ship out on calm seas. I can't stress enough the immense size of this object, enough that it filled a significant portion of the chunk of sky that was available to us over the clearing we were in. It couldn't have been more than a few hundred feet over the top of the trees. My friend and I didn't say a word, and we didn't make a single move. I remember being so mesmerized by the triangle that it was almost as if my brain was on autopilot. The craft came to a very slow stop in the direct center of the clearing overhead. On each corner of this craft were 3 lights in succession, starting from the very front of the object, moving to the left and then the right, just flickering on in a strange fade-in sort of fashion. It was kind of like a smartphone when you hit your power button and the screen fades out, but in reverse. The quality of the lights were gorgeous. They were white, but they all had this almost aqua blue haze around them. It was just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Now, one of the things that didn't make it into the book was the fact that these lights, just because I think about them a lot, I've learned new ways of describing them, I guess, and I've come to different conclusions about them. It was like a liquid, living plasma. We'll go with that for right now. My definition of it changes over the years, but that's going to be the best description I can give you of what these lights were doing. It was very odd. I had never seen anything like it. I was finally able to speak. And all I could say to my friend was something along the lines of, "Oh my God, what is that? Are you seeing that? Am I imagining this?" I just wanted to be sure. I needed that verbal confirmation from my friend, but he was badly freaked out, and all he could say was, "I see it. I see it." He just kept stuttering the same phrase over and over, like someone who had been out in the cold for too long. He was physically more frightened than I was, trembling. He actually stood up and was sort of pacing back and forth while keeping his gaze on this gigantic black triangle. The craft began to move. Oops. The craft began to move again. As it did, we felt that unnatural electromagnetic sensation escalate. The craft made its way across the sky again and then disappeared over the trees. The hairs on my body ceased to stand on end, accompanied by yet another unnatural rush of air. About 5 seconds after, we could no longer see the triangle. The noises one would expect to hear out in the woods at night returned to their natural state. Now, after an event like this, you would expect the kids of our age to wake everyone up, screaming and shouting about what had happened, but we just didn't. That sticks out when I recall this event. We went back to the tent, and I don't think we slept very much, but we just didn't talk about it the rest of the night. Considering I already knew so much about the phenomenon, even at such a young age, the stigma associated with the subject prevented me from sharing the story with almost anyone for several years, including my parents and my immediate family. As I've gotten older, though, I have shared it on several occasions. I have lived with this experience as one of the driving factors in me researching the phenomenon and related subjects. This happened to me, and there's no changing that fact. It changed everything. I went from a believer to an experiencer. I still get chills when I sit and picture that triangular craft gliding through the sky. I'm left with really 2 possibilities as far as what it was: black military or aerospace tech of the highest order, or non-human intelligence. The technology required to get that thing off the ground, let alone maneuver it through the air, didn't exist, at least publicly, in 1998, nor does it exist now in 2023. There have been moments of internalized frustration associated with sharing my experience, mostly stemming from relaying it to the closed-minded among us. I get it, though I can't help but wish they could have seen what I did and felt everything that I felt when this event happened. The experience altered the trajectory of my entire existence. It changed everything. I'm just a guy looking for answers to the most profound questions we have asked as a species. I am relentless in this search. I live with the knowledge that something is happening, and it's a double-edged sword like almost nothing else. A second experience, well, at least the second one that's in the book. This one is more recent. This happened on November 26th of 2022, so last year. This event caught me completely off guard, even though it was not the first time this type of thing has taken place in my life. It takes nothing away from the sheer awe I found myself in as I laid eyes on something I could not explain floating in the sky above me. At approximately 2 p.m., I was driving my work truck heading east in the direction of my job to return from doing field visits. Ironically, only 10 minutes prior to this, I had been recording a vlog video on the phenomenon, which is still unreleased to this day, by the way, but I do have it. As I approached the intersection where I would be taking a left turn, there was a sharp, bright glimmer that caught my eye above me through the windshield. I looked upward, and there it was in the sky. Above my truck was this cone, just sitting in place, yet it was rotating. Not very fast, but just churning in a circular motion. The top portion of the cone came to a sharp point. With the sun to its right, it glistened almost like metal, but it had a very glassy, translucent appearance. The blue sky was clear of any real cloud cover, so I had the object in full, direct view. It was a beautiful thing to lay eyes on. My sense of time began to waver, not to mention the fact that I had to keep my eyes on the road. The sighting lasted for what I estimate to be the slowest 3 seconds I've ever experienced, and then it vanished. But not in a split-second flash or anything like that. It was as if the object took the sky behind it and wrapped it around itself like a sheet and faded behind it. At this point, my phone was now in my hand with my camera on and ready. However, it had transpired too quickly for me to even have a chance of capturing anything. But just in case the object decided to show itself one more time, I pulled over into the parking lot directly to my right and began to record. I waited for about 10 minutes or so, but to no avail. I was stunned. It really took me by surprise, ironically appearing just after I had recorded a video talking about the phenomenon. It was as if I was being teased by whatever the intelligence was behind this event. After I stopped the recording, I got back into my truck and I began recording a different clip. In this clip, I made note of my location, time, the date, and the quick details of what I had seen. Not too long after that, I returned to my job and I filed a report with the National UFO Reporting Center. I provided as detailed a description as possible. If you guys were to go onto the website and look for it, you will find it. It really kills me that this object, whatever it was, vanished before I even had the slightest chance to capture it on video or at least a photo. Regardless, I was grateful to have seen such a beautiful and mysterious sight. The rest of the week was pretty odd for me too. I'm not sure if these events are related, but I still wanted to make note of anything out of the ordinary because this is how the phenomenon seems to operate, based on what I know of it. That week, every single night, my dreams were dramatically lucid, just out of nowhere. On the 28th, 2 days after the sighting, the way my day began was extremely unusual, following yet another lucid dream. When I got up out of bed, and I've never had this type of feeling to such an extraordinary degree, I was questioning whether or not I was still asleep. It was really odd. I've had that kind of thing last for maybe a few seconds in bed before getting up plenty of times prior, but this stopped me in my tracks and lasted 15 minutes or so. Again, I don't really know if there's any direct correlation between my sighting and this unusual sleep pattern and subsequent incident of my mind questioning my surroundings, but I feel it was more than worth noting. That's not all, though. On 3 separate occasions over that next week, I experienced what I can only describe as precognition. I am not claiming to be some kind of mystic here, and I have my own personal opinions on such phenomena. But this really couldn't be ignored. And during meditation, I had been experiencing very strange presences around me, very similar to the feeling that you'll get when someone enters the room you're in and you haven't even laid eyes on them yet. In the months following the sighting, it felt like my life had entered a beautiful new chapter. So many wonderful things had begun to happen, and I can't help but feel as though that cone in the sky may have been a sign of the great things that have now come to fruition. There is no way for me to know whether or not that's true. All I truly know is that we know very little. So that is an excerpt from Ryan Sprague's book, Somewhere in the Skies. That's the first edition, the very, very first one, and that is what I experienced. So now I'm going to look over the chat and see what I've missed while reading that. Good to see that you guys have been kind of keeping busy and talking amongst yourselves. I you know, I think about the triangle a lot. And it's amazing just how clear I can see it, like in my own head when trying to recall it, compared to some other memories that I have of like significant events, like 9/11. I don't know, my first kiss. Things that really, really stick out to a person. That incident, though, is like the one memory I have that is it's so clear. And I've always wondered why that is. I mean, it is just in my face when I think about it. Yes, Lily. And it's funny you say that. I've actually been trying to use Midjourney and Photoshop and whatnot to um, create a proper rendition of what I saw. It's just that it's hard to properly depict what these lights looked like. Like, nothing I create is going to do it justice. It's almost as if it's like just something that is so damn impossible that I don't know. I have this sometimes. Well, yeah, I guess we'll call it that. I have this theory that maybe part of what I was seeing had some sort of, for lack of a better term, I'm sure Roy Herbert's would want to kick my ass for saying this, but it had some sort of like interdimensional quality to it, where it's like I was seeing something that violates the laws of our three-dimensional space. I mean, it's just so hard to talk about. I still don't think I'm painting the proper picture when it comes to those lights. There's just something really weird about them. Um, yeah, I mean, I've drawn it a million times. Why? I don't know. I just did, right? Like, just on a rainy day. Yeah, let me draw what I saw, and I don't know, maybe it's like a way of reconnecting with it aside from just thinking about it. A way to kind of like relive it. Hey Heather, what's going on? No big deal. It's pretty much just story time tonight because it's Digby's birthday. We had to reschedule the interview with Paige today. It was a whole lot of stuff happening, but tonight is one of those rare occasions where I'm really doing most of the show off of just a couple notes and just off the top of my head, essentially. So now that it's just me, your eyes see 30 to 60 frames per second. It's hard to capture. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Hello again, Heather. I want to give you guys a little bit of insight into something that I've brought up a couple times that's going to be more prominently featured in my next YouTube video, which I've been working on for a while. It's taken me a while because, information comes in and then I'm like, oh, I got to add this. And then I think of this. I want to let you guys know that after I post this next YouTube video, that I'm at least going to try, aside from this podcast, I'm going to try to at least get a new video up on my channel every week. And it could be about anything, really. It could be a case. It could be, a longer form situation. But I'm really going to put my foot on the gas and really go for it. Because I want to do this full time. I don't want to have to keep going to this backbreaking day job. I need to be a full-fledged UFO researcher who is also a musician and an artist. Like, that's what I do, right? Like, that's me. And I like to write. I like to create things. So, with everyone's continued support, that's possible. And you guys have been doing such a killer job of being the backbone of the show, showing up every time we go live. And it just means the fucking world to me, to be blunt. It really does. So, I'm like losing my train of thought now because. All right. So, I've told you guys that I have a couple sources. There's people that I'm talking to you. Oh, well, I appreciate that, Sandy. Thank you. I live in New Jersey, Lily. East Coast. Oh my God, what is up, Sheev? Jesus, dude, I haven't seen you in a very, very long time, man. Very long time. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. That's crazy. Came out of nowhere. So, there's a couple people that I've been talking to that have been feeding me information. And I know there's a lot of people out here that are like, crushed, I guess, by the fact that the Schumer amendment is getting like ripped apart from the inside and but based on what one of these gentlemen was telling me, this, this and I want to believe him, okay? Like, and I have no way. The only way I'm gonna know is how this plays out. There's no way for me to prove or disprove it. But I mean, I did my best to vet the guy, with the tools at my disposal and some of the people that I'm friends with in real life. What looks like may happen is once we get into the new year, once we get into January, the other whistleblowers that are waiting behind the scenes, they are ready to essentially enact revenge against what's been happening. The Republicans that blocked this essentially have lit a fire under the asses of individuals who have come into very close contact with non-human technology, materials, biologics. So I would not be pessimistic moving forward. I really, really, really wouldn't be pessimistic about it. He's not. And it's interesting, I could say this, the individuals that I talk to, they don't know one another. For all I know, they they've never heard of each other and don't know that the other exists. And they're saying very similar things to me. That's what I find very interesting. There's two specific individuals that I speak with that have given me very similar pieces of information. They're very separate from one another, and that holds true with everything that's currently happening. So it's gonna be an interesting year, I would say. The ball's in our court, though. It really is. I don't know what they were thinking by doing what they did. I don't think. I mean, how could they not realize what this was going to cause? But maybe they really didn't think it through. Maybe they're just, following their marching orders. I don't know. Sheev, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, we're a long way from the days of me just having a PlayStation and just streaming Battlefront, right? Like, I'm here on PC now, and a big. I'd like to think that I'm considered part of the UFO community. At least the research community, that people know who I am, and it's nice to be remembered, and it's nice to have friends out here. It's really great. So, yeah, I promised you guys a couple stories, so I'm gonna give you guys a couple more stories. I didn't plan on doing the podcast tonight for very long, but I have tons of these stories though from life, from other people, from myself. I told you guys my UFO experience, so we'll switch it up here, and we'll go into story that comes from someone else. Sheev, I'm just happy to see you here, man. Yeah, it's nice to know that you didn't forget about me. It's been such a long time. That means a lot to me, honestly. It's really crazy that you're even still subscribed to me. It's just because it's been so long, man. I'm having like Battlefront flashbacks. So I was doing a furniture delivery like a month ago, and we were delivering a bedroom set. So we essentially have to build part of it. Okay, so we bring in the dresser, the chest. You got to put the mirror on the dresser, but then you got to bring in the rails, the headboard, the footboard. You got to bring in the slats, and we have to put all of that together. Throw on the box springs, throw on the mattress, put a case over the mattress and the box springs. Sometimes it's split box springs. Like it's a process. There's a lot to it. Now, this gentleman that was real cool. He was a new customer with us. Never seen him before. He lived alone. I think he was probably in his mid to late 70s. His wife had passed away, unfortunately. So I felt sorry for the guy in that regard. But he's still kind of hanging in there. He's still enjoying life the best that he can. So he told me that, he had served in the military. He had been in the Air Force. And he didn't even go into which battles he had been a part of or anything like that, and I try not to ask about that because, I don't want to offend anybody, right? But he told me a really interesting UFO story that he experienced firsthand, which was bizarre. So he was flying out over the Atlantic, I believe. And it was like in the middle of the night. So it's real dark. Obviously, there's no lights out there. And this is decades ago. And he said what happened was that, like, if he looked down, it was a very clear night. He could see the ocean technically from from the altitude that he was at. But just barely, and the only way he could see it was from some of the light that was coming from his aircraft. But it was still very, very dark. He was mostly using his instruments to navigate. And I think he was even, because of the stars were pretty bright, he was able to, at least discern the horizon and things of that sort. I won't forget you either, Sheev. I promise that, man. I never have. That's why it's great that you showed up. It means a lot to me, man. Thank you. So he was out over the Atlantic. It's dark. And he said all of a sudden beneath him, so it was beneath him. It was in the ocean, but like out ahead of him. He said it looked like someone was like slowly turning on a big bright light bulb. And then it just sat there. So he's moving closer and closer to it, and it's below him, but he can see it. And this is when it gets really interesting. So he goes over the light, and now he can't see it anymore. And of course, he's thinking to himself, maybe I'll turn around and try to have a look. He thought maybe it could be somebody in distress. He's checking his radio to see if there's any distress signals going out. He says all of a sudden, the light, he sees it coming from underneath him, and it gets back ahead of him. He flies over it again, and then it does it again, and it comes back. It just kept skip. It was like, here's his plane, here's the light in the water. He'd come over it, and it would go like that. So it was like this weird, like continuous motion, and then eventually it stopped doing that, and then it just stayed ahead of him, stayed ahead of him, stayed ahead of him. It's underwater, and he said that this thing, he was estimating like at full speed, it was going, several hundred miles per hour underwater. So he's going along. It's now keeping pace with him, and now he's very confused. Like, what on earth even has the capability of doing this? And again, this is decades ago. This isn't recent. And he said all of a sudden, it moves out real far ahead of him, but he can still see it. And he said the water on the surface, like, parted. Almost, you guys remember that scene from Bruce Almighty, where he splits the soup? That's like what this sounded like. The surface of the water, like, physically split. It moved, and he said that it was like a disc-shaped light, and he said it was like this brilliant whitish green. It came out of the water, and it stopped right ahead of him. Right? So now he's moving towards it. It's at eye level with him in altitude. He has to take evasive measures now. So what he decides to do is he decides to kind of go up and around it to try to kind of keep an eye on it. This is, I guess. And then as he's doing that, it turns, and now it's alongside of him. And it's pacing him like this. And then all of a sudden, he said it gets out ahead of him, and it makes like a C, and just zips off into the upper atmosphere. Gone. I mean, could you imagine seeing something like that? And to have someone who I've never met randomly give me this story was so cool, because we were just talking, just regular conversation. And I'm not even sure how we ended up on that. But he didn't know, that I have a YouTube channel dedicated to this. He wasn't aware of the fact that, I'm so heavily involved in research and, know some people now. Like, he didn't know that. And that's why I was like, hey, man, you're sharing the story with the right person. And I showed him my Twitter. I showed him my YouTube channel. He actually subscribed to my YouTube channel, so that's really cool. So maybe one of these days he'll pop into the chat. Yeah, that was a really cool story. I really enjoyed that one. And I could tell too, like the way he was describing everything, you could see it in his eyes that it was like you could tell he was watching it in his mind's eye. You know what I mean? Like it's like it was just indicative of very clear recall on his part. That even at his advanced age, these memories are still extremely clear to him, despite being so many years later. So I thought that was just incredible. So I got one more story for you guys, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Unfortunately, Tom has a day job that he works, and you guys all know that, of course. And got to be up at like 7, so I would like to, jump in the shower, make sure my dog gets his playtime and all that because he looks forward to it at night. Like when I come home from work, Jet, my dog, presents his squeaky ball toy like as soon as I walk in the door. But what he does is he takes it in his mouth and he picks up the ball and he whips his head and he throws the ball at you. A clear indication that it's time for human to play with dog. One of these days, I'm gonna bring him on the stream though, because he's just the best. So, I met this family a couple years back. I was at a barbecue. This is crazy one though. Because this story wasn't coming from an adult. Now, this is at a friend's house, okay? So there was a lot of people there that I didn't actually know. It was like their family. And we're in their backyard and we're doing the typical summer barbecue thing, right? Got the badminton going, there's beer, there's music. It was a nice time. Got some, burgers and hot dogs being grilled and whatnot. It was cool, standard North American barbecue situation. Very, very, very cool stuff. A lot of nice people I met at that particular party and ended up becoming pretty good friends with. So I was sitting next to one of my friends, and we were on the topic of UFOs. And at the time, I was using the term aliens a hell of a lot more frequently. And there was a family that was there that had a little girl that was 5, maybe. And she was within earshot of us. And I'm noticing her looking back and forth at us, back and forth. And I was like, it's one of the situations where I'm like, okay, this is like a little kid. I'm an adult. Does my beard like frighten this little girl? So like, why does she keep looking over here? Do I look, you know what I mean? Like, because kids are weird sometimes. They look at you and they think you're scary because you have like a beard. And my beard was like really thick at the time. So I thought I was like freaking this kid out and I like felt bad. So she walks over to us while we're talking about abduction. And I had been just kind of going over some specific points and patterns and such, that have been encountered across the board, I guess, right? Like someone wakes up in the middle of the night, a light fills their room, and then, short, bald beings walk into the bedroom and they're lifted out of the bed and all that. This 5-year-old girl walks up to me and my friend. She goes, "Hello." And we're like, hi, what's your name? Oh, I'm Daisy. I was like, oh, hey, hi, Daisy. That's a very pretty name. Just it's a little kid, right? And I'm just whatever. And she's listening to us. Like, she's just standing there listening to what we're talking about, but she's not saying anything. And finally, I stop and I ask her, and I'm like, and I don't know why. It's like, I can't even believe I asked a 5-year-old this question, but I mean, I could tell she was like really listening. And I was like, Daisy, have you ever seen a UFO before? And this little 5-year-old girl, she gives like a little flick of the wrist and she goes, oh, all the time. So at this point, I'm just like, oh, whatever. Like, maybe she's pulling my leg. And she goes, it was only a few days ago, too. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What did you see? And she was like, well, I heard you say something about little people in the bedroom. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, some people have seen some weird things while they were, half awake or sleeping. And because I wasn't trying to go like, I was trying to water down what I was saying because this is a child and I didn't want to like freak her out. I didn't want to scare her or anything. So I was trying to like, chalk it up to, someone, being half awake, just I was trying to get around it. And she goes, and I'll never forget this one because this is actually not the first time I've heard this term used before. She goes, yeah, last week I woke up and the little doctors that play with me in the middle of the night came back. I hadn't seen them in a long time though, but they came back to play. And I'm like, looking at my friend like, and I'm like, little doctors? And she's like, yeah, and she started going into these extraordinarily detailed descriptions of these experiences where she says that she'll be laying in bed. She wakes up. She knows that it's time to play, as she calls it. And she says that she goes on these magical adventures with them where they fly. And, she says she remembers looking down at her house and she could see her whole neighborhood and all that. And I'm going to try to do this in real time for you guys. Yeah, and you're right, Lily. Kids are very honest and have a funny way of saying things. No question about it. So I grabbed a pen and paper and I asked her to draw what she saw. And I remember very clearly what she drew. And I'm going to very loosely draw it for you guys. Because it's I wish I had taken a photo of it. Now, this was a 5-year-old, so I'm going to try to draw like a 5-year-old. She drew it like this. And you'll notice a couple things. There were some details here that really struck me. It was something, and I'm trying to draw like a 5-year-old, and it's not easy. So, this is pretty close. That's my remote viewing session paper. Astral does the remote viewing spaces on Twitter every Thursday, and that was my shitty submission from last week. I got the rectangle part right, I guess, sort of, if you want to count that as anything. So she drew something very similar to that. Now, I asked her, starting off, I said, I see that you drew 4 fingers and that they're really long. And I said, why did you draw that? And she said, because that's what it looked like. And I said, but we have 5 fingers. And she goes, but they don't. And that one really stuck out with me and stayed with me, was the way that she said it. She was like, these beings have these characteristics. Like, she was very specific about it. She said that their fingers were very long, 4 fingers. They were skinny, they had big heads, and she said that their eyes were huge. And I didn't press her too hard after that. The only other detail that I really got out of her at that point, before I decided, like, okay, this is getting kind of intense here, and this is somebody's kid, I don't know what's going on here. She specifically said that she knows when they show up because she wakes up and the light comes into her room. And now, she was very specific about that, though. Not that there was a light shining in her window. She says that there is a light that comes into her room. It hovers into her room, and that's when she knows that they're going to be there. And this is, again, a child. She was like 4 or 5 years old talking about this. I have an entire collection on my computer of drawings done by children of beings from all over the world. I have tons of them. I mean, I think like hundreds, maybe. I mean, I have a lot. I'm looking for the specific folder. Let's see here. There's other images mixed in. I made a folder on my master file drive. I have a UFO UAP main file, and then there's a bunch of folders inside of that, right? Well, that's a folder too, technically. This one is UFO art. So actually, we can go... I'll share this with you guys. This will be like kind of the last thing that we do. This was a data dump that someone that I know gave me. Right around the time that I built my computer, actually. So let's see. Share screen. Window. There. I think that's an example of one of these images. I'm trying to see if I can... And it says lights, alien lady. Trying to see if I can scroll through some of these. Maybe it's not going to let me. Let me see. Try this. Maybe if I open it with something different. Huh. I thought it was going to actually like let me scroll through it. But I mean, you guys get the general point here. Just I have tons of them that somebody collected. I'll just do it the long way here. Let's see this. Another one. And I mean, I just have tons of these. Oh, wait, will that work? Is that I guess that button's not going to work either. I'm going to figure out a better way of presenting images in real time, because they like on StreamYard, they give you the slides option, but I'm not trying to do slides. Like, I just want to, like, scroll through these images. I mean, There's so many of these that I have. It's like you wouldn't believe it. And I've back traced some of them to different different cases and such. There's actually some that I grabbed from specific cases that I found online. All right, this one's kind of creepy too. And these were all drawn by children. All drawn by kids. And I'll show you guys one more here. There's one I'm looking for in particular. Where is it? Because there's some where the children even drew the craft, or like kind of drew like the situation that was going on with really weird detail. Now this one, somebody wrote notes on, but still worth showing. This was also done by a very young child. There's the moon. Here's a craft. And there's these very tall beings that are taking children. Aliens taking children at night. So I definitely in the future want to do a lot more content centered around abduction experiences. Obviously, there's another part coming to The Eyes of the Infiltrators, this whole giant series that I'm doing on the Greys. And that next part is very much going to dive into abduction and the hybridization program and such. But so we went for almost an hour and a half, which is about as long as I wanted to aim for tonight, which I really, really am happy that I was able to get us here. Sandy says, this sounds so much like my son's niece who claimed to have a friend who visited her at her grandma's house, old Civil War era house, and she only saw her there. Oh, that's pretty weird. You know what that reminds me of? Real quick, this isn't UFO related, but it's still paranormal. When I was 16, there was this girl that I used to date, and there was a day where she and I and her dad went to her dad's friend's house, and he told us this story that one day he looked out through his kitchen window into his backyard, and he saw someone dressed in like full like Civil War attire, weapon in hand and everything, just walking across the field. And he was like, I have no idea, what that was about. I thought that was kind of strange. And because this was not a guy that would, this wasn't, person that would talk about things like this at all. It was the only time I ever heard him say anything about any sort of paranormal activity or anything weird. But yeah. And listen, if you guys have paranormal experiences that you want to share or you want to have like read on the show or anything, feel free to send me or Digby an email. DM us on Twitter /X. If you're comfortable with that, or if you want to come on the show, you want to be a guest on the show, let us know. We're happy to have you on. But that's going to be the end for this evening, YouTube family. I appreciate you all being here with me tonight. I am so exhausted from today. The weather's been terrible. My head is throbbing. I cannot wait to lay down. It's like I'm so excited to go to sleep tonight. Lily says, I was up at 6 a.m. going to work when I lived at home, and I looked down the hallway and saw a black shadow half hanging out of my bedroom door. Yeah, no thanks, especially before work. Like, after work, but before work, no. Yeah, see right there, and it was gone. And it was gone. Yeah, I saw a black shadow mass in my room not all that long ago, but it was in the midst of someone that remote viewing my room at that time, so I think it was connected to them somehow. So nothing malevolent. Yeah, I know someone who saw that same pose. Happened at my job, actually. It was a girl that used to work with me, and she saw something like that while we were in the middle of working, uh, like just out of nowhere. And I mean, she was shook up. She was really shook up, actually. To this day, uh, don't really know what that was, but thanks for being here, everybody. Just make sure you leave a like if you haven't. It helps the algorithms. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you're someone who's watching that hasn't been in the chat and you're just kind of observing, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our other episodes. We have a lot of incredible guests that are lined up to be coming on the show, like Stephen Bassett, Christopher Sharp, James Fox. We have a lot of cool people on the way. It's a crazy time for everybody right now, so scheduling is absolutely absurd. Steve, we're trying to get on for next week, but just bear with us. We're doing our best. They're doing their best as well. And other than that, just be good to one another, be kind, try to inject some positivity in the world the best that you can. And we will see you next Sunday, aiming for 1 p.m. Eastern. If Mr. Bassett comes on with us, it may be a different time, so to be announced. And keep an eye out for my next YouTube video. It's coming sooner than you think. I'm just not putting a date on it because it's bad luck to do so, and I always jinx myself, so I am not going to give a definitive day until the video is exported and ready to go. I love you guys. All of you have a wonderful night or day wherever you are. Thank you for being here with me. I am Tom Thompson, and you have been watching the Unidentified Anomalous Podcast. Take care. We'll see you next time.